Free your mind now. Be part of People's Pan-African Parliament, the Pan-African Pyramid Debate with your speaker, Andrew Irumba Katusabe.
A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome aboard. Welcome to the edition of the Pan-African Pyramid Show here at Fairway Hotel. My name is Andrew Irumba Katusabe, your speaker. 21 years since the African Union Convention to Fight Corruption. How far has Uganda achieved? The African Union Convention on Preventing and Combating Corruption was adopted in Maputo, Mozambique on 11th July 2003 to fight rampant political corruption on the African continent. It represents regional consensus on what African states should do in the areas of prevention, criminalization, international cooperation, and asset recovery. Going beyond other similar conventions, the African Union on Corruption calls for the eradication of corruption in the private and public sectors. The convention covers a wide range of offenses including bribery, domestic or foreign, diversion of property by public officials, trading in influence, illicit enrichment, money laundering, and concealment of property, and primarily consists of mandatory provisions. It also obliged the signatories to introduce open and converted investigations against corruption. Those measures attracted criticisms in the Journal of African Law, where Peter Scott argued that the convention disregards other aspects of the law, of the rule of law, like data protection and the presumption of innocence until proven guilty. In 2007, it was reported that the following 9 countries had legal gaps relating to this convention and the United Nations Convention Against Corruption. Those countries are Algeria, Burundi, Kenya, Liberia, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, South Africa, Togo, and Uganda. The convention came into force on 5th August 2006 and has been ratified by 48 member states of the African Union. Uganda, in particular, signed and ratified the convention in 2007. But how much has Uganda achieved since? Ladies and gentlemen, 21 years of the convention, African Union Convention on Corruption. They made a convention to fight corruption. It's 21 years since then. And this was actually held in Maputo, Mozambique.
Free your mind now. Be part of People's Pan-African Parliament, the Pan-African Pyramid Debate with your speaker, Andrew Irumba Katusabe.
Right, Honorable Speaker, you have very openly stated in your opening remarks the purpose of the convention. And in discussing this convention and how far Africa has gone, there is always no need. There is always no need to belabor the point and go into the technicalities. But right, Honorable Speaker, our nation, as we speak now, is literally on the verge of chaos. We have seen in the neighboring country, our neighboring country of Kenya has descended into chaotic scenes. And Kenya is also a signatory to the African Union Convention to combat and fight corruption. So, in the last 20 years, what has Kenya been doing in its war to combat corruption? In the last 20 years, what has Uganda done in its war to combat corruption? Right, Honorable Speaker, you have heard our president state time and again that the ruling party in Uganda, the NRM, has got certain key pillars. The first is patriotism. The second is Pan-Africanism. I want to state on the second one, which is Pan-Africanism, because we are discussing an African convention to fight corruption. Surprisingly, even with all the statements the government gives about the pillar of NRM and therefore the pillar of government, since it is the ruling government, Pan-Africanism is not being understood apparently by the government. Because if Pan-Africanism is truly a pillar of the NRM government, then we would have expected that this African Union Convention is implemented as a Pan-Africanist stand. And we also would expect the government to fight corruption in a Pan-Africanist way. And that is not what is happening. Right, Honorable Speaker, on the African continent, the best president who fought corruption on the continent is President of Tanzania, Mwalimu Julius Nyerere. And that president, first of all, died personally, not corrupt. That president also died without the nation of Tanzania going into any corruption scandal. And that is why this year, in commemoration of the African Union Convention on the 11th of July, Nyerere is still posthumously awarded for fighting corruption. And what did he do differently from the presidents who are living in Africa now? What did Nyerere do differently? In the spirit of Pan-Africanism, where did Nyerere excel that the current Pan-African presidents are not doing? Right, Honorable Speaker, this convention was made on the 11th July 2003, making it 21 years now. It was made in Mozambique. And when it was made in Mozambique, when it was signed in Mozambique, all the presidents were of one view, that corruption had become a disease that Africa needed to address. And what is Pan-Africanist about the diagnosis of the problem? Right, Honorable Speaker, the term and the practice of corruption is an African.
Hey.
Corruption essentially is an African.
Hey, but Professor, there is a lot of corruption even outside Africa.
Corruption is an African. It is not African. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not an African thing.
It's not an African thing. When you look at how the concept operates, it is a neo-colonial mechanism, like the president of Ghana stated. Pan-Africanism, as understood by the Ghanaian leader, was that neo-colonialism was the last stage of imperialism. When the white man left Africa, he left certain systems that had been corrupted. He left systems that had been corrupted so that they could continue perpetually exploiting the African continent. And that is the essence of corruption. I have seen so many people trying to define corruption in African languages, and it falls short. Others say, Georgia Mimiro. Now you see, it falls short. I want to come to, for example, corruption in Uganda. I want to assure you, Right Honorable Speaker, look at it from the time the white person left. When the white person left, initially, there were no cases of corruption because they left a public service that was functioning. But then they began to corrupt the public service itself. they began to have structural adjustment within public service.
Mm.
They began to introduce authorities outside public service.
Mm.
They began to corrupt the system. They could not, for example, have corruption within the coffee sector as long as coffee remained under Ministry of Agriculture. So what do? They had to create Uganda Coffee Development Authority. They could not corrupt road tenders as long as it remained under Ministry of Works. Create Uganda National Uganda National Roads Authority.
Mm.
They could not corrupt revenue collection in any African country. What do they introduce? National revenue authorities. In Uganda, Uganda Revenue Authority. Because previously the public service was collecting revenue through the traditional ministries. Corruption was less. Now they introduce Uganda Revenue Authority. And now they can now play with neo-colonial African states and introduce predatory taxes. Predatory taxes.
Mm.
They can now play at will and introduce, for example, NFRIS here, which is the same tax they are calling MTS in Kenya. Where is the sovereignty of Africa in all this? They have corrupted it. They have corrupted the sovereignty of Africa. And Right Honorable Speaker, I'm glad that African leaders like our president has woken up and is summarizing authorities
Then
and
creating units.
reverting them back to the main ministries. That is a very wonderful step. So these units, I don't read so much in them, but I read the pragmatic steps that His Excellency the President has taken towards fighting corruption by addressing the neo-colonial mistakes. Right Honorable Speaker, if I may directly speak to the topic, in the last 20 years, the government of Uganda has not been effective in fighting corruption because the problem of authorities vis-a-vis government ministries had not been addressed. I would say, therefore, that in the 21 years, this is the only year the government has woken up to close authorities and then revert to mainstream government, and that will fight corruption.
Mm.
Yes.
Mm.
Actually, the problem with that convention, it proposed so many units. It proposed that there should be an ombudsman, inspectorate of government, and many African governments formed IGGs. By the way, legally speaking, Inspectorate General of Government is not supposed to be such a big organization with hundreds of staff. No, the essence is the ombudsman. It's supposed to be one person, one ombudsman, or two people. Because corruption cannot be fought. It's not a public matter. Corruption cannot be made a job. Corruption cannot be fought with billions when it is also losing billions. You see, when you look at the budget of Uganda government in fighting corruption, I wish they could close all the agencies and even use that money to do social rehabilitation. Because when you have too many agencies, they are going to be eating into each other. You see, as a lawyer, I can tell you that it was enough to fight corruption with only one act, the Penal Code Act, which has been there since 1950. It's enough. Instead, now people have watered it down. Corruption, creating an anti-corruption act, because in the Penal Code, theft is theft. Not so?
Mm.
Theft is theft. But because the modern elite don't want to be called thieves, they want to go via IGG Act. They want to go via the Anti-Corruption Act of 2009 to say, I'm not a thief. I'm just corrupt. I've just embezzled. I have just misappropriated funds. I've just caused financial loss. All those gimmicks. By the way, they now create so many organs that IGG can investigate corruption, embezzlement, misappropriation of funds, while police can investigate theft. No. Close the IGG. close the anti-corruption courts, retain Uganda police, use only penal code, call theft, theft. Right, Honorable Speaker. Whereas Uganda, we don't have a national religion. But at least we have the predominant religion in Uganda. And that religion has got 10. It has got 10 commandments. And one of the commandments is, do not steal. Mambo kwisha. One command.
Mambo kwisha.
Yes. That's the end of the matter.
Mambo
Theft.
kwisha.
We raise our children saying, don't steal. We say in churches, please don't steal. And that is the essence of us as a nation, the 10 commandments. But do you see how we are now going around the issue? We have a convention of the African Union talking of how to fight corruption. What is corruption? Isn't it theft? Isn't it theft? Isn't it theft of money?
It is.
It is. So, Right Honorable Speaker, one of the classic ways to fight corruption is to call corruption by its original name, which is theft. Close all these things. I think if I were president, I could fight corruption with 3 institutions. Uganda Police Force, Uganda Prisons, Penal Code Act, and the courts. And by the way, gentlemen, did you know that even we don't need to have anti-corruption court? We could even amend the LC1 court to have powers over corruption. And it would work. Do you know why the corrupt don't want it? Yes. Do you know why the corrupt are fearing? In fact, the courts that the corrupt fear most is the LC1 court. That is why recently the corrupt in Uganda said the LC1 chairperson should no longer witness their what? Land
Signing.
Did you hear that as Ugandans? Why is it that the corrupt fear the LC1?
No, they don't fear them. They suspect that they are actually among the people who were causing a lot of confusion in the land transaction. And yet some of them don't understand the law. Yet selling of such property.
They therefore fear them. I want to tell you, Right Honorable Speaker, as a Pan-Africanist, do you know how President Nyerere fought corruption? He used the Pan-African method of ujamaa. I'm sorry that I'm the oldest in this room. But do you remember 1979, 1980? How many remember? When Uganda was liberated by Tanzanian People's Defense Forces and Kikosi Maalum, UNLA, what was the first thing they did? They formed what we call Mayumba Kumi. Did you hear about it? I think you heard your parents talk about Mayumba Kumi. Now, that Mayumba Kumi was something borrowed from Tanzania. It is what now, later, Gaddafi developed in his green book, Resistance Council. It is what, during the Bush War, our comrades, our leaders like Museveni developed into the Resistance Council courts and Resistance Council committees in the village. I can assure you, Right Honorable Speaker, if the government of the Republic of Uganda is interested in fighting corruption, it should go back to the LC system. How does it fight corruption?
You mean government is not interested?
I'm telling you that if they are interested, my perception is that they are not really very interested. Because what did Nyerere do in Tanzania? Every village had a register of property. Are you following? Every village had a register of who has bought land. And this is why the corrupt are fearing LC1 system and LC1 courts. Because even if you embezzle 5 billion like Geraldine Nassai, you will want to buy a farm.
She has slept in Ruzira.
Yes. You'd want to buy a farm, not so? And that you may even want to buy a 1 square mile farm. But that farm has to be in a village. And so the person who will know that a certain person has bought a 1 billion shilling farm is who?
LC1.
LC1.
In the village.
So in Nyerere's Tanzania, there is no way any person of Chama cha Mapinduzi, our serikali ya Tanzania, could be corrupt. Because Nyerere had a personal, in fact, every nyumba kumi under ujamaa in Tanzania had access to the president directly. So the LC1s of all of Tanzania could tell Nyerere, hey, Mheshimiwa, who has done who? Today has done it in the village. He has bought a whole hill. Oh, give me the report. Look at all these corrupt people, gentlemen. I can round up all these guys if I were president by asking for a report from every LC1. Who has bought what? Who has bought which farm? Who has got 100,000 cattle in your village? When did he buy it? When did he start work? What is his name? What is his father's name? What did his father leave? Look at Geraldine Sali. You can round up this lady by going to the LC1 chairperson of her village. What's the name of her father? How rich was her father? What did her father leave her? What has she now bought? When did she buy it? Then you connect with when the money disappeared.
What is her salary?
What is her salary? And Right Honorable Speaker, we are just joking and teetering corruption. LCs can round up corruption in 1 year. Give us a list of every building in your village. Now, as a lawyer, I can tell you that we have what we call beneficial owners form in company matters. Now, we are required to declare who is the director behind the company. Who is the real owner of that company. So even if there is an apartment of 100 flats, the LC1 should know who owns it. If it is a company, who is the company? Has there ever been a company that drove to that village to buy land? Do we have automatic vehicles which drive themselves? No. Somebody drove to that village, walked out of the car, brought cash, and bought. Right Honorable Speaker, the African way to end corruption must also not forget Ubuntu.
Ubuntu.
Which is,
Ubuntu concept.
The Ubuntu concept. Ujamaa in Tanzania was African socialism. As Pan-Africans, we know that. The corruption now is a capitalist self-centeredness. It's about capitalism. You get educated, you get billions from your place of work, you go and buy the hill in your village, evict the community, build alone, enrich yourself, and you're not concerned about the community. Like if you know Ubuntu, who would you evict? Because Ubuntu is a Pan-Africanist concept that says you are when the community is. As a Pan-Africanist, you would not embezzle 5 billion shillings to say, mine, I have finished. I'm going to build a storage building in the village, have 1,000 cows on the ranch in the village, and I'm rich. According to Ubuntu, you're not rich. Because the community around you is not rich. Not so? But if you are to be truly rich, the entire community should also have cows, should also have capacity for clean drinking water, and then, as Ubuntu, that village can be said to be rich. So, Right Honorable Speaker, if even when we followed the concept of Ubuntu, we could round up the corrupt. The best advantage we have now is that globally there is no more remittance of money outside because of the 2001 war on international terrorism. Because of the ongoing war in the Middle East, you cannot send out $100,000. Immediately you send out $10,000. Mossad,
FBI, they would all be wanting to know whether that money is not going to Hamas, whether that money is not going to Bin Laden. So the good thing is that every money being stolen in Uganda is also being invested here.
That's the good thing.
That's the good thing, as the president says. So which means we can round up these people within shortest notice. Actually, one radio announcement is enough. That this Saturday, let all LC1s call a corruption assembly. Let them identify which buildings are there, owned by who, and give the report to government. I've seen the IGG trying to say they are going to appoint 5 people per village to fight corruption. Why? There's already LC1. Just give LC1 sitting allowances. Very little. Very little.
But you see, Professor, they fear that LC1s also are corrupt.
Right, Honorable Speaker.
That's the worry.
Right, Honorable Speaker, we have made this point here, that the corruption of an LC is not comparable to the corruption of other civil servants. Why? The LC1 is born in that village. He will die in that village. I tell you, he cannot be corrupt to the extent of taking anything which everybody will eventually know. Even in these criminal courts, even in courts as such, if LC1s were given power, I tell you, they would not take bribes. For example, 2 drunkards are drinking. They kill each other. And the LC is to try the case. Do you know that that case would be tried without any bribe? Because the killer is known. His children are known. The children of the one who has been killed are known. The LC1 is possibly an uncle to many people in the village. He cannot take a bribe of 2 million to decide something which will remain a stench in the village. The Chief Justice of Uganda, Owindolo, likes telling us of a story. That one time, there was a corrupt magistrate who was grade 2. Now, grade 2 magistrates are not professionals. They're not lawyers. But they used to be, they could get from the local village. So this, this grade 2 magistrate got a bribe from the village. And when he got the bribe, he was given a cow. He also took the cow and tied it behind his house in the village. So when the case went badly, the man said, but for me, I want my cow. As he read the judgment in the court, the man said, but you'll find I've removed my cow. you read your judgment, but you are going to find that what? I've removed my cow. So he went to the crowd and untied his cow and walked. The one who wants to follow me, you follow me. My panga is you. So that's a very good example.
That is Professor, that's why people are fearing that you're
exactly. Exactly. Because I tell you, there's no way an LC1 can be corrupt in the village. That he has taken 2 million to decide the murder case. And then tomorrow he buys a gomasi for his wife. Which people?
As the man was reading the judgment,
yeah.
saying, I'm going to pick my goat.
I'm going to pick my, you read your judgment, but for me, I'm going for my car. You will find I've untied it. And the Chief Justice talks about this. Right, then, therefore, Right Honorable Speaker, if we don't understand corruption from a Pan-Africanist view, we are going to miss the point. I feel embittered when I see people talking on radio. Corruption, NRM. What? Let me tell you, Right Honorable Speaker, corruption is wherever there's a neo-colonial state. That's why there's corruption in Kenya, where there's no Museveni. There's corruption in Malawi. So there is corruption everywhere. Why? Because capitalism is failing. So corruption is not about Museveni. It's about the system, the capitalist system, which must be stopped. Because as Raila Odinga said, now you say Ruto must go. Go where? After Ruto has gone, who comes? The Bible says in the book of Genesis chapter 6, verse 12. And that's in the King James Version. It says, the Lord looked upon the earth, and behold, he found that the whole world was corrupt. Corruption, therefore, Right Honorable Speaker, is a spiritual matter. It's a spiritual matter that finds a corrupted system. the two, exactly, the two become now a combination very hard to remove. It is the spirit of Mammon. It's the spirit of greed. How can a person who is earning 50 million as a salary go and then rob a Karamojong iron sheet, which is worth only 40,000? Greed, spirit of greed. Now, Right Honorable Speaker,
Yes.
I conclude by saying this. Ati, what should we do? What must we do? First of all, actually I've written a book called Christian Warfare.
Christian warfare.
Yes, Pan-African and Christian warfare against corruption. Now, Right Honorable Speaker,
Go ahead.
we are Africans, and we must use African proverbs. There's an African proverb that says, when you point an accusing finger at someone, how many fingers? 3 are pointing at you, the accuser. Can we try it? Point at me, an accusing finger. How many fingers are pointing at you?
4, me 1.
This. You're pointing like this.
Yes.
How many fingers are pointing at me? The one
4.
pointing. 3.
Including this one.
Including the big one. 4.
There are 4.
Even more.
Because you are doing like this.
That is if your thumb is bent. But you see, the 3.
Yes.
So, much as we are saying that our leaders are corrupt, how many fingers are pointing at us?
4.
Now, number 1, why are we to blame for our leaders being corrupt? Number 1, Right Honorable Speaker, elections. The apostle said, the Ghanaian apostle said, if we want Africa to prosper, tafadhali, please, we should reform the democratic system. Because it is too commercialized. Election politics is too commercialized. It needs 1 billion for someone to become an MP. Or from 500,000 to 1 billion. But for the president to campaign in Uganda, President Museveni needs 1 trillion shillings. So 2021, he used 1 trillion. Now, 2026, he's looking for how much? 1 trillion plus. So he's looking for over a what? A trillion. Because it must be more than the one of 2021. NRM used 1 trillion. Let's be fair. NRM used 1 trillion to facilitate its people. Or for them to facilitate themselves. So, we ourselves have put a demand on the president, and that's making him corrupt.
You need a trillion to choose a leader.
You need a trillion to choose a leader. And what is the salary of President Museveni?
3 million.
3.6 million. So, how is a person who earns 3.6 million funding all these elections of his 5 times?
1 trillion.
How is he funding 1 trillion election budget with 3.6 million his salary? From which salary he must feed his grandchildren and his children. Also put on some clothes. Corruption. We are the ones making him corrupt. Look at it, between 1986 and 1996, when President Museveni came from the bush. You people, you were young. But I can assure you as a 60-year-old person, there was no corruption. 1986 to 1996. By the same NRM government, by the same president, no corruption. Corruption started 1996 when elections started. Yes. So, finger number 1, we are the ones making. Number 2, Right Honorable Speaker, not even election demands. Begging. Begging. President was in Gomba last month, and the bishop of the Church of Uganda went to the president and said, President, my vote vehicle is already old. I need a new one. President, I need a new one. Who is talking? Bishop, who collects tithe. All the tithe is in the diocese is collected by the same bishop.
And in order to corner him well, he said, 2026 elections are near.
Yes.
You heard that?
Yes, he said 2026 elections.
So what are you going to do in 2026 as a bishop?
Point number 2, too much begging on the president. And you are right, Honorable Speaker, we must be fair to the President. Semujunganda, these days I hate hearing.
Honorable Semujunganda.
Yes, I hate hearing his
Why?
words. Because whenever he opens his mouth, he says, the President's State House consumes 1 trillion. Because
Yes.
he says they consume 800 billion.
Which is a fact.
And you can now imagine that Museveni has sat at a table with his children and grandchildren, and they are eating 800 billion. Yet, the truth is that it is Ugandans who are what? Begging. The list of beggars over that 800. So it is not fair for Semujunganda to say the president is consuming 800 billion when people like the bishop are begging for.
Why does he give it to them?
So we must therefore know that we are over begging the president. That's
Why
number
does
two.
he accept to be begged?
Because if he does not beg, you will not vote him. Why don't you accept to vote him without begging? Why? You should sacrifice yourself and be sacrosanct and vote without being bought. As you can.
I hear you, Professor.
Exactly. Accept to vote properly without being bought. Then Museveni will not buy. Number 3, Right Honorable Speaker, is the issue of neo-colonial loans. Me, I would not even bother to follow these MPs for this small money. Because I have the intellect. I have masters in international law. And I know where the real corruption is. The real corruption is on the loans being given to African states by World Bank. You sign for $3 billion. They don't bring the money. It remains there. They bring maybe 1 billion. And the 1 billion they bring, half of it goes back in flights, buying very expensive computers and vehicles.
Hey.
So, yes. So
By who? By the same people.
by the same World Bank.
So it means they're also corrupt.
Yes. They are not also. They are the ones who are the main corrupt.
They are the most corrupt.
Exactly.
But why are they saying Africa
Maybe
is the
it's
most
our
corrupt?
MPs who are also just corrupt. So that is
Why are they saying Africa is the most corrupt? Yet actually,
That's why in Kenya, President Ruto has instituted a unit called Foreign Aid Investigation Unit. And the youth of Kenya, by the way, they are not talking about Ruto only. They are saying they want accountability for all the loans received 61 years since independence.
61 years ago.
They want accountability. And that's what we should demand in Uganda. Let us not look at NRM only.
61 years
Let us
ago.
look at the loans the World Bank has been giving us. By the way, most of the loan was air. They don't bring the money, yet they ask for interest. I don't know what type of bank the World Bank is, because a bank is not supposed to lend to someone who is no longer able to pay. And Pope Francis has already stated in June, 5th June in Rome, he said, no bank, IMF or World Bank, should give loans to African countries because they cannot pay. It's like getting someone who is a drug addict. He's already over in debts. He already has about 50 million debts. And you, a bank, you are still giving. Would you be a bank? No. Right, Honorable Speaker, I beg to end on that note.
Free your mind now. Be part of People's Pan-African Parliament, the Pan-African Pyramid Debate with your speaker, Andrew Irumba Katusabe.
If you are to look at corruption, we ought to ask ourselves, yes, we are corrupt. We are thieves. Let me not even say corrupt. The system that you set up is a theft. It's a robbery scheme, properly aligned under suits with positions in government. The convention itself, I think it was set up properly with no, I don't want to say with no guidance, but it had so much teeth that it failed to bite anything. Because if the heads of state could sit at that point, discuss whatever they discussed, why is it still here? Why do we say country X is still corrupt? Because they set it up well knowing it will not function. The same way that the African Union was set up, the same way that the World Bank was set up, with minimal interventions, but with, what should I say, with interests that were personal by then, at that moment. And is it functioning now? Did they think it would function 10 years down the road? Do we think it is even going to function even if it is 50 years down the road? No. Because even they who set it up, I'm sure they knew it would bite without biting. And a dog without teeth is a beautiful flower placed somewhere to scare mosquitoes, if I may. So, what is the problem with Africa? Let us be honest. One of the biggest problem we have in Africa is that the people under the system that was set up either by the colonialism or by the fathers of these states or by the fathers of the august houses we have, they are broke. The people are broke. The people are broke. A person looks at the only source of survival is now politics. It is the only viable investment you can have. It is the only bet you can have. Because the economies themselves are failing. See, why should I leave Parliament, go in and invest in an economy that I know within 5 years, 10 years, there's not going to be any returns? If I may, Right Honorable Speaker, do we have any local investment that has survived the last 50 years? Is it here?
Local investments.
Any local investment, any local company that has survived the past 50 years within the country?
There was Sembule trying.
There was. There was. Do we still have it now? So, is it wrong for them to continue investing in corruption in the system that they know it is the only source of survival? So, the biggest cause of this thing called corruption is that the system you set up, the system they did set up, has made us perpetual poor creatures. We are living before the standard of humanity, if there could be. That someone could sit somewhere and dictate terms. I'm giving you $2 billion. You're going to construct a flyover. Who is going to construct it? Jika is coming with the money. How much is he coming with? 2 billion. All the expatriates are coming with him. The materials plus with him. You have to pay interest on it. And you have to pay the people who are going to run this thing. It is a system you set up. Now, and there are Ugandans who could have used this money.
But they're going to say China has donated.
They have donated.
But we have not touched it.
You see, Professor made a submission which I want to agree with. Today we are owed 9.6 trillion. Where did that money go? Because
who received it?
Who received it? Now, a commercial bank.
Professor, let us have those bank transfers.
A commercial bank.
Yes.
A commercial bank is going to lend a state. A commercial bank that is supposed to receives a license, a renewal license every year from the central government. It is as if it is declaring the central government of the country does not have the capacity to hold this commercial bank. It is so much broke that omutabana agenda kuwola taata we ku ssente. Are you really worth holding this family? So is the system really worth? It is what you set up. Abantu bavu. Let us speak the truth now. The only source of survival is kuba. Si kulyanguzi, kuba.
But Professor, also, when a bank is going to borrow you money, Professor, they first look at your capacity to repay back. The capacity. Do you have the capacity? That's why they always take they call it what? Of what you... Me, I'm still talking on the individual basis. When the bank wants to borrow you money, they first look at your capacity to pay back that money.
Yes.
An individual.
Yes.
That's why they say bring a vehicle, bring the logbook.
Yes.
They look at your land. They even say bring the land title. And what you submit must be more than what they are going to borrow you.
Yes.
Isn't it? Why? Because their primary objective is not to take your land. They don't want the land. They want their money.
You're talking
Isn't
of security.
Huh?
Security.
Mortgage. So, how do these countries who know Uganda is already highly indebted again come back and borrow more money to us?
That's
How?
why the Pope is also questioning. And the Pope is not a simple person.
You know that I've been having a debt for over 50 years. I've not even paid a penny.
But-
You're adding me another. What is your motivation?
Enslavement.
Eh.
Yeah, so that he can continue. Just enslavement.
Pierre Lumumba said it here. They will make sure that you keep under debt. Continue, Mwanji, as you finish.
So, when we agree on the fundamentals that the system, it is a poverty system, the people are poor, there is the only source of survival is corruption. Lastly, this is my thinking. If the government, because there's something I've come to understand, the time I've been in the media industry, I've been privileged to sit with the economists. When you hear the minister of planning speaking economics, you may think tomorrow everyone is going to be rich.
Shh.
Of course.
Eh.
But I think there's a problem we don't realize. Is that there is a very big difference between what they say and what actually they do. The economies of Africa, all through, are low. Not because these people don't want to work. Professor, there's something that annoys me of recent. Most of the people who are privy in places of authority, I'm going to. When
He said these people, what they say is different from what they do. Isn't that what you said?
when I look at forgotten where I was. When I listen to, I've come to get angry with people in privileged places. See, they always make a lousy insult to the public. You see, they tell people temwagala kola. Honestly, not only here in Uganda, in Kenya, in Africa, youths have dedicated themselves to work, to do anything to survive. But all that they cannot is that their economy is at what is the cost of a shilling? Because the central bank charges every note you use. What is the cost of that shilling? And you expect these people to work and earn and sustain themselves. Why don't they just get into any office, swindle something, go? You see, you're making submission that when the corruption courts were sent to the chairman's LC1 level, the problem could be alleviated. I have a different thinking. Is that they will also learn. Because someone is keeping 164 billion in his house. Huh? Why shouldn't I keep 10? Is fine for me. And this person is being treated to an executive Luzira hotel. For me, I'm only taking 10. Because this is what you've set up. It is the system that has been set up. And how do we solve these issues of corruption? This is my thinking, just my thinking. I may be wrong, but again, it is a school of thought I share. Rawlings, when he came to in Ghana, there are some things that the Baganda have a saying, webango otamwemukira. Webaka. There are some things that you just need to get out of place and out of order. Get them. Amino was a good example. Maybe, sometimes I say may his soul rest in peace. It was a very good example. Parade them there. How much did he steal? 164. This one 1.7 billion. This one 500 million. Beautiful. Parade them. They either produce it or they face the shooting squad. Firing squad. Within a week, corruption will be no more. I'm not right. Right, Honorable Speaker, I understand they are the protocols of submission to the platform. Again, I say I'm not right, but it constitutes a school of thought. Because if it's a disease and we don't treat it the way it is supposed to be treated, how can we heal of it if it's AIDS? Why should we take Panadol? It's not a painkiller thing. you get what it deserves. And when you treat it the way it must be treated, even the rest will not come into the arena. Lastly,
Finally, I give you a minute.
finally, when I look through the literatures, waliwo akatabo Buganda gye twasubwa, Bull Kawere.
The Uganda that we missed.
The same shares a concept with batabani ba kisiikirize. The same shares a concept with omuzimu gwa Kazooba. And the same shares a concept with olusozi lw'Abatulege.
Where are you getting those things?
Lw'Abatulege.
Where are those things? Where are you getting them from?
These are literature, is an open market. Olusozi lw'Abatulege is Benon Chibuka. Omuzimu gwa Kazooba is Alex
Mukulu.
Yes. And Buganda gye twasubwa is Bull Kawere. This is what they share when it comes to theft within community. You cannot treat these people as if they were part of you. When you get them, treat them with the maximum isolation that they deserve according to 1, the norms, 2, the customs, and 3, the Africanicity of the cultures and the tribes that they come from. These problems will be solved. I beg to submit.
Free your mind now. Be part of People's Pan-African Parliament, the Pan-African Pyramid Debate with your speaker, Andrew Irumba Katusabe.
Good evening, all of us.
Good evening.
Protocol observed. Those who have submitted, thank you very much. I just want to be precise to the point. Corruption, we are all aware and acquainted of or with what corruption means, how it has crippled development in Africa, particularly in Uganda. I don't think I need to define what corruption means.
No.
Everyone knows that.
You don't need to do that.
So, right from the time when Amin was in charge, he tried to be so responsive to those who were corrupt. But slightly after NRM government took over power, there were so many things which were happening, and it was during that time when the super intelligent American young students from Silicon Valley sat down and came up with the SAPs. For those of you who have studied economics, you understand structural adjustment programs. And the major aim was to cripple further developments in the third world countries, particularly Uganda. And they brought in the ideas of decentralization, privatization. Corruption started from that. I'm going to start from that time. And, after privatizing what was by then the government entities in Uganda, it was the people who were already in power who had the finances and the access that bought those companies or government entities. So, how does corruption operate? And African Union Convention about combating corruption. I think the first meeting was in 2003. Then in last signature 2020, and it came into force in 2006. I don't know if those are 21 years, but it came into force in 2000, in February, I think 10th February 2006.
2007.
2007. Okay, thank you. That's when it came into force. But has it lived up to its expectations? I think it has failed miserably. Because a thief cannot fight a thief.
Why? What are you saying?
You can't. Because he's your friend.
Hey.
You're working together.
At different levels.
At different levels. So, here, corruption, specifically in Uganda, if you are to look at the sectors where corruption is too rampant, you can look at the police, judiciary, and the procurement structure, institution. Bidding of government contracts. Who evaluates? Who does the vetting? Who takes the contract? and under what program, under what terms and conditions. It is here whereby prices are inflated because of personal interests. It is here where we have under-table cash payments, backdoor deals. So let's say this phone is 1 million, but the actual value of the phone is 500 million, is 500 thousand shillings. You take 10%, I take 20, he takes 20. That's corruption. All these things have been here in government entities. Whether you go to Uganda Airlines, whether you go to Railway, whether you go to even this state organization, there is too much corruption. Including the cash bonanza, which we didn't know about just of recent. There is something also trending about the leader of opposition and the Uganda Airlines, whatever. So, and we cannot fight corruption using these means we are using. Even if you set 10 anti-corruption units, it will not fight corruption.
Free your mind now. Be part of People's Pan-African Parliament, the Pan-African Pyramid Debate with your speaker, Andrew Irumba Katusabe.
I do not know why corruption has coercively taken shape, especially by those who have the power, and that those who do not have power are the ones addressing corruption, with an exception of very few with power. When you thoroughly read or go through a book written by James A. Robinson and the rest, they are very clear on reasons why nations fail. And of course, it is about power. And I think when you do not use power ethically, but also with a high mode of integrity, then corruption is inevitable. And I think I want to quote somewhere the previous speakers, including the professor. History has it. Science has confirmed it. And divinity has also defended it. He mentioned, the professor, that the people who we say they are corrupt, those officials, wherever in the MDAs, ministries, departments, and agencies, these are Christians, these are Muslims, these are people who subscribe to the churches we have here in Uganda. Of course, when you talk of tranquility, it is defeated in that case. And every time you compromise the future generations, then what you talked about, especially the brilliant speaker Patrick, it's inevitable that the SAPs are simply to deter African countries from their continuous developments. And I think he's very elaborate when he talks about that. When you look at what the forefathers defined in their earliest ages, when he was a state attorney general, he was in his 20s. I do not know if we have state attorney generals who are in their 20s as we talk at the moment. That means the system have changed, and what we just need as a moment is we need to champion dialogue that is cross-generational, that is intergenerational, where the young can interact with the elders, and where the elders can carefully listen from the younger people. When every time you compromise the political panjandrum of the young people, then you are simply showing the future young people that in their 80s, in their 50s, in their 40s, they won't be having the same policies we have today. You are aware that recently the government of Uganda has allocated, in fact, it is now very ready to pay close to 200 billion shillings in Uganda, paying for the damages caused when they were in Congo, I think in the last 2 years in 2021. These are Ugandans who have power, who just selfishly want to do their own economic businesses in Congo. But who is paying this money? It is the tax money. It is me and you who pay taxes on a daily routine. How much are we? So why couldn't such people be held responsible for such damages caused in the Democratic Republic of Congo? So there is a country, I think there are two countries, I think in Honduras and Arizona. One part is in the north of Mexico, then the other in the south part of it. In the 1921, especially when Mexico had just been split from Spain, in fact, these two countries were purely operating differently. In fact, it was two areas, but in the same country. One was better democratically developed, even in economics, in any other kind of spheres of operation in their country, in the country. One was more developed than the other. But in the end, Some of these countries are even far much better. Why? Because they find better means to counter hegemonize corruption in their country. So when you look in Uganda here, I was just very clear and said that when you look at what Julius Nyerere was doing in Tanzania, you know what happened to him. You know what happened.
He died of COVID-19.
I do not want
That's
to
what I
justify
know.
that.
That's
I'm
what
not
I
a
know.
doctor, neither.
Okay, what happened to him? What do you know?
So, but what I wanted to, what happened to Julius Nyerere is perhaps what happened to Gaddafi. These are who are trying to look at United Africa. One was coming from an angle of Casablanca. One was coming from Monrovia. When you look at our African, you see what was in Congo, Patrice Lumumba at a younger age. So, what the professor said, he was very clear. Every time we would not want to prioritize what matters. You see, the aristocrats are very clear when they say that every time you collect taxes from the public and do not use them to provide the basic social necessities, you are just depriving them and making them poorer in their daily living lives. So, whereas the government and especially President Museveni has vowed to
fight corruption.
He has done his part, but he's still working with a failed system. You could remember that in the 1980s, there was a footballer in the names of Ronaldinho. Very good, like you hear of Ronaldinho today, those of Messi and others, depending on the team you support. Today they are no more. Why? Because perhaps somewhere they were corrupted. Either they were not training, therefore they became physically unprepared, and they could no longer do any job. For those who are believers, you are aware that the Bible is very clear when it talks about talent, it talks about wisdom, it talks about those who are sweating for bread, but in the end, time and chance are there for us. If Kenya has done it, the generation is Z. What about Uganda? Now the question is there an enabling environment?
Free your mind now. Be part of People's Pan-African Parliament, the Pan-African Pyramid Debate with your speaker, Andrew Irumba Katusabe.
Sign out. Please don't forget 31st of August, our 7th edition of the Pan-African Pyramid Global Awards. Endeavor to get your dinner card before the D-Day. My name is Andrew Irumba Katusabe.
Join us on the 7th Pan-African Pyramid Global Awards 2024 and 10th Anniversary Bonfire Dinner, recognizing and awarding Pan-Africanists who selflessly fought and defended the rights and freedoms of the black race globally. On 31st August 2024 at Fairway Hotel from 3 p.m. Dress code, strictly traditional or African wear. Theme, Pan-Africanism plus environmentalism equals to humanism. Book your dinner card now. Table for 6, 3 million. Platinum, 1 million. Gold, 500K. Silver, 400K. Bronze, 150K. Come, let's rekindle our roots. Call 0757 342 317 or 0782 342 317 to book your ticket now. Africa, don't agonize, organize. Powered by Fairway Hotel, NBS TV, Grow Foundation, The Spy Uganda, Detective UG.
Free your mind now. Be part of People's Pan-African Parliament, the Pan-African Pyramid Debate with your speaker, Andrew Irumba Katusabe.